Alrighty, traders, welcome to our Sunday weekly webinar. Thank you guys so much for being here. So we're just going to jump right into things this week. Last week was pretty crazy in the markets. If you guys are tuning in for your first time, my name is David Schinkel. I'm the CEO and founder of Positive Traders. I do these Sunday webinars every Sunday to kind of give you guys my analysis on what I think about the markets for the upcoming week. As usual, the disclaimer that I always say is that, this is just my analysis and it's also, based on higher time frames. So, what I'm going to be talking about right now is as far as like potential trade setups or my ideas for the markets. A lot of it is going to have to do, with like the weekly time frame of, over the span of a week, not just what's going to be happening, like this evening or tomorrow or anything like that. So definitely be keeping that in mind when you guys are watching this, but this is just my opinion. So let's jump right into things. As usual, I also want to just start with the economic calendar. So we don't really have a lot in the beginning of the week. We do actually have quite a bit towards the end of the week and starting in the middle of the week. So today, tomorrow, Tuesday is pretty light. We really only have like two things over the next like 3 days. So nothing too crazy. Wednesday, we start to kind of get a bunch of things. We have a bunch of CAD news, like a ton of CAD news, actually. They have their interest rate decision. So we have some oil inventories for the dollar, a bunch of news. Thursday, a bunch more news for the dollar. And then Friday, a bunch of news for the dollar. So like Thursday and Friday is pretty big for the dollar, and then Wednesday is pretty big for the Canadian dollar, so Thursday and Friday is good for the US dollar, I guess is the best way to say. And it also looks like I'm going to have to look into this. I'm not really sure what is going on these days, but looks like we have a bunch of banks that are going to be closed on Thursday and Friday. Nothing in the US, but all these banks on Friday are going to be closed. So probably gonna not see a whole lot of volatility on Friday, but you say Easter. Okay, Easter. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump right into things, guys. So other than that, with the economic calendar, make sure that you guys have, make sure that you're aware of the big things that are going to be coming out. Make sure on Thursday you're aware of all the USD news that's coming out. Pretty ideally you want to know when all of the news with the red folders are coming out. Those are all generally market moving pieces of news. So let's go ahead and jump right into the technical analysis, guys. Looking at gold starting off, let's go ahead and we can take a peek at it on the weekly first. Weekly, we have a little bit of let me get my drawing utensil out. All right, this is last week's candle. All right, and we have a nice exhaustion candle. Like still we're playing right around this 50% retracement level. It's been right around this level for quite a bit now. If we actually look at it on the daily, it's still in quite a bit of consolidation. We had this huge fake out, this huge pin bar. So ideally, right, we might be thinking that this pair is going to fall, but looking, across the board, we're going to be looking at a couple other pairs right now. It almost looks like the dollar is going to weaken. So if we see a weaker dollar, then we could see a strong gold. But it's kind of interesting in the markets right now. As you guys know, last week, not only did we have a ton of just standard fundamental news, right? We had Wednesday, we had, some unemployment claims. We had some ADP, for the dollar. And then Friday, we had non-farm payroll. So a bunch of stuff last week. But we also had, in the news, there was all of the events that occurred in Syria that also moved the dollar and moved, a lot of commodities such as like gold, and it moved like the yen and a bunch of other things. So pretty crazy last week. So, really fundamentally moving, but, looking at the technicals right now, it did kind of give a huge fake out. It just shot up and then came right back down. But overall, I do think that the dollar, my personal opinion is just based on technicalities, based on the technicals on the charts, with the exception of this exhaustion candle on gold right here. We're going to look at a couple examples on like Euro USD and USD Swiss franc. I do think that the dollar could potentially be weakening right now. So I'm going to be looking for potentially this flag, this giant like bull flag to be broken and it potentially moving higher. But, it's pretty easy to trade these scenarios too when we have such tight consolidation like this. It's really easy. Just wait for a daily candle to either close above or below this, this consolidation area, and then trade in that direction. And generally, you're gonna have a profitable trade. So let's look at the dollar index for a minute. Dollar is still rallying, which is, I want to look at one thing which is pretty interesting. So last week, and this is why we didn't actually take any trades Friday, is because I'm sure a ton of people lost money last week just from trading, just thinking basically that you can just like make money really easily and not really like respecting the technicals, because I actually pulled up last week's non-farm payrolls, and I'm sure that there were a lot of people that were shorting the dollar after the NFP was released, right? When all three of these news was released last week. But I had actually talked about this. I had spoken on this on this last Sunday's webinar. So, last Sunday was before NFP, and I had actually specifically talked about, we don't trade the news because it's gambling, but if you are looking at the news, you're just like messing around on a demo account or something like that, or you're just trying to learn and understand, a good tip is, so every single NFP, right? Every single NFP, all three of these are released, not just NFP, which is this middle one, but we have the unemployment rate, which is released. And then we also have the average hourly earnings. And I talked about this last Sunday. This is recorded. You guys can go check it out on our YouTube. But I had talked about the average hourly earnings out of all three of these being the most important influence on basically the news. And that's just been recently, right? Everything kind of trends, sometimes things change, right? Correlations change, things change. So this is just recently, I've noticed the past like 6 months to a year, that the average hourly earnings has had a bigger impact than, over the non-farm payroll and the unemployment rate. So it's pretty interesting because we saw like a really good unemployment rate, but we saw like a really, really, really bad NFP. And then we saw average hourly earnings stay the same. And we saw the dollar continue to rally. So, a lot of people, I'm sure. So essentially what I'm trying to say in this scenario, guys, is don't trade NFP. Like, I know just a lot of groups out there that I've seen, they don't even look at the unemployment rate. They don't even look at the average hourly earnings. The only thing they care about is looking at what this number is. And if you do that in this scenario, right, if you saw 98K and that's really, really bad, that's a horrible number, then you might be inclined to sell a dollar, right? If you don't take into consideration the average hourly earnings, which came out as expected, as forecasted, and then, of course, the unemployment rate too, which came out way better. This is like ultra lows, guys, 4.5%. That's like ridiculously low. Like, we haven't had unemployment rates this low since like 2007, 2008. So two really good things. So we saw the dollar continue to rally. And that's why it's a gamble, guys, right? That's why it's a gamble, because you had some things say bad for the dollar, some things say good for the dollar. And that's why it's really tricky. And, I don't recommend trading NFP and stuff like that. I know there's a lot of people out there that advocate trading NFP and things like that, but I don't. So anyways, looking at the dollar on from a technical standpoint, we are kind of coming up to this trend line, and this trend line is debatable on how you want to draw it, right? This is just how I have it drawn. Some people might go a little bit higher, to the top of this wick or whatnot. So I think this may have a little bit of room to extend to the upside, just a little bit, right? But I think we could see some resistance in this area, but it really just has to do with, we just kind of have to see what's going to happen at these trend lines. Because if we look at that pair, and then we also, not that pair, that index, and then we also look at Euro USD, same thing, right? Just the exact opposite of the dollar index, right? It's at this, but instead of it being at a resistance trend line, it's at a support trend line, right? And then same exact opposite thing with USD Swiss franc, right? So just like the dollar index being at a resistance trend line, it's at a resistance trend line right now. So pretty much right now, the dollar, of course, the dollar index is going to guide and direct what happens with these two pairs right here. So we have to see what happens at this trend line. I think this is going to be a good indicator. We have to see kind of what happens, and we have to see, are we going to see a break of this trend line? Are we going to get like a bounce, and then is the dollar going to continue rallying? Like, is because we did see the interest rates hike get raised, right? They did the interest rate hike a few weeks back. So overall that is supposed to give strength to the dollar. So is this going to be sorry, that's a horrible looking question mark, but is this ready for the dollar to start rallying? Is it already time? Or is it going to play in this wedge? Is it going to respect this trend line? And is it going to bounce back down, possibly continue playing and then possibly break out? We don't know. So that's why on Sundays, I don't like just jumping into a trade. I don't really like just getting in, especially, we have a little small gap right now on the dollar index. We don't have a gap on Euro USD. We don't have a gap on USD Swiss franc, but we have a little gap on the dollar index because I think the dollar index opens up like an hour later or something like that. So, just be careful with the markets right now, especially if you're trading Euro USD and USD Swiss franc. And it is kind of interesting too. I saw so many people on social media, and I'm going to show you guys a trade that we had on a pending order in the premium group that didn't get activated. And this is why I use pending orders. But let's go ahead and take a look. So last week, guys, I saw this on social media. I saw this in a bunch of different people posting this in whatnot. But I saw, and we had even talked about this too. So, I'm not going to, give crap to anybody else. I'm just saying specifically that if people took this trade without any type of confirmation or anything like that, then you lost a lot of money. So, or if you, took it aggressively and you didn't wait for confirmation, then you lost money. But we talked about this 61.8% retracement level on Euro USD last week that held for quite a while. And then there were also some big exhaustion candles, some big wicks, right? So it did give us, possible clues to the upside for Euro USD. So I know a lot of people were planning on buying Euro USD and expecting it to, continue rallying. But, we were looking for actually just the opposite on USD Swiss franc though. So, just show you guys something and I had the consolidation a little bit tighter. I had actually this. So we had actually put a sell stop at 1.0008, which is just a little bit below this red dotted line. And that was because for a few reasons, right? Not only did we have, it does the opposite of Euro USD, which was at the 61.8% retracement level. There were also these big exhaustion candles. So definitely good analysis. And just basically, I'm just trying to give you guys an example of why I personally would recommend getting in the habit of using pending orders. They'll help you a lot. And this is just a perfect scenario where, instead of last week, a lot of people might have said, okay, why didn't we just, sell right here? When we saw this big exhaustion candle and these big exhaustion candles right here. Well, it's not guaranteed. Well, nothing's ever guaranteed, but you have a better chance of it going to the downside if the lows are broken. But, if it's still in this consolidation range, you have less of a chance of it going in your favor. So, Sheldon, you said you lost the EU trade. Yeah, I know a lot of people that so we didn't take any trades on this in the group last week. We were looking at it, right? But I needed to see a daily candle or a 4-hour candle close above this zone right here. This zone. And we just didn't get it. In fact, we ended up dropping lower. So not to get too sidetracked, but just to kind of show you guys, why the markets are just ruthless sometimes and why it's really good to use risk management when you're going to take trades. 140 pips in profit on EU. That's awesome, Waleed. Rash says, but market makers can use the pending orders to trigger them and hit the stop loss. Is that right, or just some conspiracy theory? Well, I mean, all the markets are all like, I mean, the market makers are very real, but there's no difference between a pending order and like a normal order. You know, your broker can see every single order. You know, your broker can see, you know, let's say you have like a broker, right? They can see every pending order on their servers. They can see all of the open orders, right? They can see all of the buy stops, sell stops, all the pending orders. So it's, you know, that's kind of like irrelevant in my opinion. Wally, nice, by the way, 140 pips on Euro USD. Nice. Very cool. And this could have gone both ways too, you know, totally two perspectives on this too, right? Because a lot of people were looking at the Fibonacci level, right? And they weren't looking at the bear flag, right? But again, you know, it's always a coin toss, right? Because it can go both ways. You know, sometimes the markets are going to respect the fib levels and not the, you know, the flags, and then other times the markets are going to respect the flags and not the fib levels, like we saw in this case. So, you know, but yeah. So, anyways, you know, just to continue going through this, to continue running through this, not to waste too much of your guys' time. Euro USD is sitting at this support trend line. You know, we're seeing USD Swiss franc sitting at this resistance trend line. So I'm going to be watching these pairs closely to see what happens and see how they act at these trend lines. All right, pound dollar. All right, pound dollar right now is sitting at the 50% retracement level of the swing low to swing high, which is pretty much the, right now, I believe it's actually going to be not quite. I thought that might have been like the yearly low and yearly high, but it's neither the yearly low nor the yearly high. Just the previous swing low to swing high right here, swing low to swing high. This is retraced. You can see it right here, 50% retracement levels. So we're sitting at that right now. I haven't been interested in trading this pair. Haven't really been interested in trading any pound pairs at all lately, just because we were in quite a bit of consolidation. But we did see a pretty significant breakout on Friday. So pretty big breakout, but again, I'm not really too keen on taking trades based off of just one candle last week, especially with all the fundamentals that happened in the markets, or especially with everything that happened. So, all right, let's go ahead and look at pound yen. All right, pound yen. Super crazy. This pair is in some insane consolidation, right? It's been moving sideways for 54 days. You guys see that? 54 days. Not exactly sideways, but it's been moving in this descending channel with not a whole lot of movement, not a whole lot of trendiness. So real crazy to see what's happening right now. Just this absolute like sideways movement. Not interested in trading it right now. Possibly would have been interested in getting in a buy at the bottom. But to be honest, I actually just drew this channel out. If you guys know my normal pound yen chart, which I like have had up for like the past week or so, looked a little bit different, had like a line like right here. But I didn't have this channel drawn out. So now we're conscious about this channel. I like the way it's actually formed a little bit here. So possibly in this area, depending on what happens, possibly look for shorts on pound yen. All right, dollar yen, guys. Dollar yen as well is at an interesting area too. It bounced off, made a double bottom like at the 50% retracement level, like once again. Found a huge bottoming in this area. You guys can look at it, kind of get a, maybe let me zoom out a little bit, get a better look on this pair so you guys can see the whole picture. So here's our retracement levels, or I'm sorry, here's our swing low to swing high. There's where we fibbed from. And here's our 50% retracement level right here, which we're sitting at. So we're kind of moving in like sections with this pair, but definitely a lot of consolidation going on right now. A lot of sideways consolidation. You know, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens because we do definitely, I mean, this is very clear. We have this bottoming right here. You can draw that line. We have this bottoming on dollar yen that you can see. But we're coming up to some previous support, which is now going to be some resistance. And, you know, we are also potentially coming up to some dollar weakness. We may not see dollar weakness, right? Because this could go another way too. This could go, like we talked about, this could break out and continue moving higher. And then that could just send USD, JAPY, right, dollar yen, much higher. It doesn't have to continue moving lower. It could continue moving up higher, back up to this resistance level. So kind of interested to see what happens in this area. All right. AUD USD. Potentially seeing a bottom in this area. We're just going to see, I want to see what happens if this support gets broken. We're sitting at some pretty significant support. Okay, previous resistance back here. We've had this support and resistance trend, or, you know, just line here for quite a while. We're down to it right now. Again, I'm not really paying attention to what happened on Friday too much because it looks, you know, last week the fundamentals were pretty crazy in the markets. I really want to see what happens, if it was a fake out or not, but interested in seeing what happens. Yes, Rash, possible double bottom in this area. But again, we can't you know, consider it official double bottom until we see what happens with this daily candle. I mean, it did actually, AUD USD actually did open up. Looks like it gapped down. If we look at it on the hourly, it looks like it gapped down. Yeah, but I mean, now the gap's closed, but interesting. Interesting to see what happened in this area. So potentially getting a bounce off in this area, you know, again, especially if we're going to see some dollar weakness coming through right now. Rash, she said, do we need a bullish confirmation engulfing pattern, for example? That would be ideal, right? Like a bullish engulfing candle, or if it's not going to rally up that high that quickly, then possibly like a doji and then a bullish candle, which at that point we're going to be calling that, you know, that's going to be your morning star. So that's still a bullish pattern. So I'm interested to see what happens there. But same thing with NZD USD. Same thing with NZD USD. Looking at it on the weekly, it looks pretty bearish though, right? We had these, we even actually, and we kind of missed an opportunity on this pair last week because we actually analyzed this last Sunday and we talked about these tweezer tops right here that had formed on NZD USD. So kind of interesting to see last week, you know, the tweezer tops. If you guys don't know this formation, if it's at the top, it's a bullish, or if it's at the top, it's a bearish signal. If it's at the bottom, it's a bullish signal. So in this case, we saw this bearish signal for a tweezer top, and we actually saw NZD USD fall last week. Still really bearish. But again, I'm interested to see what's going to be happening to the dollar. So looking at a lot of things, you know, and this is why I like to sit on the sidelines when the market's open, is because some pairs are looking, you know, where it's like, oh, you know, this looks like perfect to be selling the dollar right now. And then other scenarios, such as possibly like this scenario right here, this looks like a good scenario where we could potentially be buying the dollar, which would mean selling this pair. But ideally, I wouldn't be interested in selling this pair until kind of like this double bottom or this bottoming area is broken. So that's that. And finally, USD CAD, guys. Let's go ahead and look at USD CAD. On the weekly, a little bit bullish right now. Last week we had this bullish engulfing candle. Kind of looks like the opposite of NZD USD a little bit. A little bit like the opposite of NZD USD. But as you know, USD CAD is heavily influenced by, not heavily influenced by, but has a strong correlation to AUD USD and NZD USD. So a negative correlation, of course. So weekly, but again, right? So let's look at this trend line. And the reason why I say again is because if you guys have been following along for pretty much really any amount of time, this USD CAD trend line I've had on my charts for quite a while because it does go all the way back to 2014. And so we're sitting at like the underside of it right now. You can see it on the weekly time frame. And then, I mean, even when you go on the daily, look, we're like right on the underside of this trend line right now. And this trend line doesn't have to be perfect, right? You could bring it to like right there, potentially, depending on how you draw it. Right, Waleed? Yeah, it could potentially drop. So we'll see what happens. But I'm interested in definitely watching USD CAD just because of a lot of movement to the side, a lot of resistance around this trend line. So I'm gonna be watching this pair really closely, potentially looking for shorts. And that's right, Justin, you said if oil goes up. That's right. So if we actually look at oil, we can take a peek at oil real quick, which is actually interesting, right? Here's something interesting. This is WTI right now. Well, it doesn't really matter too much, Waleed, WTI and crude, if you look at both of them. WTI is crude. I mean, not WTI. Because WTI is U.S. oil, whatever UK oil is. Brent. Yeah, there we go. They pretty much moved the same. But here's one thing that's really interesting is, so last week we saw this really big rally in oil, but so you'd think if we look at USD CAD, you would think USD CAD just absolutely dropped, which at one point it did drop a little bit. But it's kind of interesting. We're seeing USD CAD still struggling to go lower with oil just skyrocketing higher. So overall, interesting to see what's happening right now. I think the markets not just last week, I think the markets the past 2 or 3 weeks have been really, really bad for trading. I think that the beginning of the year was really strong for trading. And I'm talking just based off the technicals, right? Just based off of the price action in the markets. I think that even the past couple months have been really great for trading, with the past like 2 or 3 weeks have just been absolutely horrible, like really choppy. There's have been a couple missed opportunities in the markets, or there have been a couple opportunities to make some money in the markets, but overall it's kind of been slim pickings, right? It's been really, really slim pickings in my opinion. So Waleed, you said, is what happened in Syria a reason why oil is going up? Doesn't oil move a lot or make a lot of moves because of news? Yeah, definitely oil has moved really fundamentally. And yeah, definitely you could say a demand for oil with what's going on with Syria, but I don't know how heavily, I have to be like honest, right? I'm not like some expert fundamentalist, so I don't know, what correlation, Syria specifically has on oil itself. But, I do know obviously oil is very prominent in the Middle East. So that being said though, guys, I'm going to just quickly recap, what I think are the best picks for the week. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. But just to be really clear again, right? We're looking at the dollar index. That's our main focus right now, is we're focusing on what the dollar index is doing. Okay. So if you guys don't look at the dollar index and you trade things like Euro USD or USD Swiss franc or gold or, USD JAPY or pretty much any pair that's really strongly, correlated with the dollar, then you're definitely doing yourself a disfavor. Definitely make sure you're keeping an eye on the dollar index. But right now, we are looking at some resistance at the dollar index, or we're at some resistance. So we aren't necessarily seeing resistance yet, because it's definitely still not resisting, right? I mean, we're still rallying much higher. You know, we gapped up higher. We're still moving higher. You look at it on the hourly, we're still moving up higher. So we aren't seeing resistance quite yet, but we are getting near some resistance. Just like inversely, we're getting near some support on Euro USD and then some resistance on USD Swiss franc. So these are the three that I'm kind of interested in looking at right now to see what happens around these areas. And then also gold, of course, right? If this resistance on gold is broken, you know, and we start seeing some dollar weakness, so we see some, you know, gold strength and Euro USD strength, then I will be interested in buying Euro USD back up into like the 12.70 level that it did get into last week. So other than that, guys, doesn't look like there's any questions. I appreciate you guys for coming on here. I'll go ahead and throw up the recording on YouTube as soon as possible. Have a great week, guys. Remember, when you're hopping into trades, you know, don't risk your whole account. If you're getting emotional about your trades, you're breathing about your trades, you're having to check the trade every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes, then the only like real reason is because you're risking too much. So keep those risks low. Use the position size calculator. I talked about that last week also, so make sure you guys are using that. And other than that, Wally, just real quick, you're asking, Euro Jappy dropped hard last week. What effect will that have on other pound pairs? Well, Euro Jappy, well, any pair that has like the yen in it, right? Like pound yen and USD Jappy, right? We saw like a drop in them, but I'm pretty sure if we look at Euro Jappy, it's probably retracing just like all of these are. So let's take a peek real quick. Yeah, so see, it's like retracing, it's moving up. But same thing, because all has to do with yen strength, right? And it all stimulates from gold and in the yen being a safe haven currency, and definitely what happened in Syria, right? When there's uncertainty and people don't know what's going to happen, people invest in the safe havens, which is like gold. So we saw gold rally last week, and then yen. So that's why we saw like pound yen drop pretty hard, USD Jappy drop pretty hard, things like that of that nature. And looking at Euro Jappy, like we just did real quick, that dropped as well. But all of them are retracing this week right now. All right, guys. But anyways, that is today's session. If you guys liked what if you're watching the replay and you're watching it on YouTube right now and you liked what you saw, drop a like and subscribe so you can see every single Friday, every single other Sundays, and go ahead and comment. And other than that, if you guys want to learn some more information about our premium group, you can definitely visit our website. It is positivetraders.us. I'll just quickly put it in the chat for you guys. You can go on there and kind of see everything about the premium group. But yeah, that's it. So I will catch you guys on next week's live session. Catch you guys in Telegram, dropping some trade ideas throughout the week. And other than that, have a great week, guys. But I'll see you guys all later. See you guys.